The Dark Reize boss fight in Specter of Torment has quite a few issues with its design. Some are the result of overtuning, while others are more fundamental errors. He's one of the few bosses that runs around on the ground. From there, he can do about 5 different moves. 1. He can slash at you while running on the ground. 2. He can jump into the air and do a dive kick. He can also start this move by teleporting into the air. 3. He can jump into the air and throw a boomerang at your position to where it'll get stuck on the ground or the wall. This boomerang will then remain on the field for roughly 8 seconds and shoot out smaller boomerang projectiles in both directions along the surface it's on. It'll shoot out 5 rounds of the fire boomerangs before it phases out. These smaller boomerang projectiles can also round corners and travel along the wall and floor. It doesn't collide with the surface and disappear like a regular projectile. Just like the dive kick, Dark Reize can also initiate this move by teleporting into the air. 4. Dark Reize can teleport away and after a brief amount of time, teleport back in and quickly dash along the floor. He will then typically teleport away again to start the next move. 5. He teleports in the air and throws his boomerang downward at a fixed angle. The boomerang will keep spinning while on the ground, chucking smaller flaming rock projectiles into the air. After the rocks are gone, it will then move along the ground, up the wall, and return to Dark Reize, where he'll catch it and drop back down to the ground. Dark Reize will always do this move after he does the teleport dash. Believe it or not, that last move is the only one that isn't overtuned in some way. From here, I'll be going through the moves in detail in reverse order, so starting with his 4th move, the teleport dash. The problem is that it's too fast. Okay, so you see him in the air, he teleports away, right? I move to the center of the screen because I'm like, well, I don't know where he's going to come from, so I'm going to go to the area that gives me the best view from any angle. Unfortunately, he teleports right in front of me, and this attack that he does here is incredibly fast. But what's great though, is that the screen goes black to indicate when you've been hit, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I needed to react to this in order to get out of the way, because that's how quickly he hits me. So between now and the next 15 frames, slash. It's way too fast, and that's also needing to consider the time that I still have to jump to like physically get out of the way. Average human reaction time to a simple visual stimulus is around 250 milliseconds, or 15 frames assuming a frame rate of 60 FPS. The more complex the stimulus, and the more options to react to that stimulus with, the slower our reactions become. So while we can leverage our knowledge skills to simplify the stimulus we need to react to, and with what input we need to react with, the fact of the matter is that even at its simplest, we can only react so fast. You can't make the synapses in your nervous system fire faster. Another contributing issue besides the boss moving so quickly after appearing on the screen is the fact that they chose to have it appear so close to you, giving you no space. This means that you can risk accidentally running into the boss when they teleport in. In the example here, you'll see where I make an attempt to run to the center of the screen to get away from the edge, only to find myself running closer to the boss, and as I've already established, I don't have time to react. Even when I avoid moving after seeing the boss teleport away so that I can at least give myself more space to work with, it's still not enough. Also, just an example to show what I mean about this move where he teleports, reappears, and then dashes at you real quick is just way too fast. So that's the hit, but look at the frame I actually jumped. This is when I push the button, so assuming that I have standard reaction time, let's go back 15 frames to see what did I react to when I decided to jump here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Right here, when he's still like fading in. In fact, it's actually quite difficult to see, but that is what I'm reacting to, and it's still not enough time to get out of the way. Whenever there's an aspect of a boss fight that tests your reflex, one question to ask is what is the part of the boss that the player is expected to react to? At what point do they recognize a stimulus and know what to react with? It's probably not supposed to be this part here, where the boss is barely visible on the screen and is blending in the background, fading in. Although in my case I was able to react to it, and it still wasn't enough time for me to get out of the way. The next question is that in the expected stimulus that the player is supposed to react to, how much time does it take for the player after making an input to be out of danger? In the case of Specter Knight's jump, it takes roughly 8 frames for him to jump out of the space that Dark Reize's hitbox would have moved through. It's not enough just to notice that you're being attacked, but that even if you did notice, how much time do you need to successfully get out of the way? From these 2 questions, we're able to verify if Dark Reize's attack is within standard human reaction time. This boss, unfortunately, is a case of making things unfair by making things too fast. With the third attack that I listed, it's a good deal more complicated, so there are several details I want to highlight and go over. One is that the hitboxes on the projectiles that are spawned out of the boomerang when it's on the ground are too big. Wait a minute, I think it was that right there. I go up the wall, I jump over. There! Oh my god, like the tiniest pixel of the corner of my foot on that glowing green boomerang sprite. No, I'm actually it's past me. That's even worse. And yeah, that causes me to get hit. The second is how, due to the boss taking no hit stun, knockback, or hit pause of any kind, and the size of the boomerang projectile that he throws, it's easy to trade hits when trying to attack him as he jumps into the air. And this is another element that results in why did this interaction happen? Because when he jumps in the air, he can actually do 2 different things. One is that dive kick where he dive kicks down and then bounces right back up, making that sort of V shape. And then the other is throwing that boomerang that acts like a turret on the ground. So what happens is, aha, he's jumping in the air. Opportunity strikes. I'm going to cut him out of the air. Of course, you know, he doesn't actually take hit stun. He keeps doing what he's doing. So there is his boomerang. I'm still in the air, and he throws it right at me. Here is an example from another content creator called Keith Ballard, where he runs into the same issue. The boss takes off into the air, but he's still within slashing range. He successfully hits him first, but then gets hit anyways. Even with the bounce that you get from doing a dash slash into an airborne enemy, it's not enough for him to bounce over his boomerang because of how big it is and how he seems to choose the very last possible moment to determine what direction to throw it. And while Shovel Knight has a feature where an enemy's hitbox is temporarily deactivated to avoid situations like this, where there's a near instant retaliation or collision with the thing you're attacking, it doesn't work on Reize here because it apparently doesn't apply to any projectiles they may be firing. Opportunities that are misleading means there is an issue of clarity. Moments that should be safe and reliable, but are not. This results in having to memorize exceptions to where the dash slash fails. This leads me to the third aspect of this move, which is the sheer speed that he throws the boomerang and the space it covers. Let's apply the same criteria before. What is the part of the boss that the player is expected to react to and know what to react with? How much time does it take for the player after making an input to be out of danger? The point at which the player is able to react to Reize throwing the boomerang is within a few frames after it leaves his hand. You need more than 1 frame in order to understand what direction it's going. Specter Knight can run about 3 tiles in 30 frames from an idle position, so let's keep this metric in mind with the next set of examples I'm going to go through. I'll be using Keith Ballard's gameplay footage again. In this case here, Reize jumps into the air and throws the boomerang. He's already running toward Reize before he releases the boomerang. Despite this, it's not enough time for him to run underneath it. The size, speed, and angle that the boomerang is thrown at make this impossible. It takes about 18 frames after Reize throws the boomerang for a collision to occur, but by this time, he had already been running for about 30 frames, and that was still not enough for him to get out of the way. In the next example, you see them attempt to jump over the boomerang. It's important to note that Reize's boomerang has only left his hand for about 7 frames by the time he's jumped. This means he didn't wait to see what angle or direction the boomerang was going in, so he's not using his reflex skill to jump on reaction, but using his timing skills from seeing this move before. While his timing was otherwise solid, as indicated by how he was hit at the apex of his jump right as it was about to pass underneath him, his knowledge of the boomerang's trajectory was off, because contrary to how I described it earlier, Reize does not actually throw the boomerang at your position, even though it would have been reasonable to assume that's what was going on. He really throws it about 1.5 to 2 tiles ahead of your position. This means that because it's traveling farther, the angle is relatively shallower, and so it covers more space. This itself is difficult to notice because it requires that you recognize where you were by the time the boomerang left his hand and then comparing to where it actually landed, all while you're in the middle of a hectic fight. And because this is a difference of 1.5 to 2 tiles, it's not in the margin of what you'd consider obvious. With our third example, you'll see how even though Reize throws it a little ahead of where they were, because of the boomerang's size and speed that it is thrown at, it still closes what otherwise looks like a potential opening to sneak underneath it. Consider how he was already moving to the left before Reize had thrown the boomerang, meaning they weren't playing on reaction. It takes about 13 to 14 frames after Reize throws the boomerang for it to collide with him, which is under the average human reaction time. One last example I have here using my own gameplay footage. You can see how when I'm running away before he's thrown the boomerang, it's still too fast. It takes about 21 frames after Reize throws the boomerang for it to hit me. Within that time, I'm able to react and jump, but it's still not enough to avoid being hit. So the problem is we have another move that is too fast. Movement is at the core of action games, and when you design moves that you can't react to or move out of the way of, even when you aren't relying on reflex, this means that you have a move that undermines what it means to play an action game. You have a move that isn't skill-based. You have a move that isn't about seeing what the action is and correctly responding to it. It's a move where there was nothing you could have meaningfully done to avoid being hit because you were in the wrong spot 1 or 2 seconds ago before the move was even telegraphed. We can now move on to the next attack, which is the dive kick. The first issue is that this move also has janky hitboxes. Teleports away. He does his little dive kick. What? Hang on. He does his dive kick. Go up, 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 up. What? That's the point of collision? Look. Yeah, so... Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, no, I'm calling. That's rough.
Oh, there's no hit sparks too.
Yeah.
You can't tell where the game thought you got collided.
In this example from Nintendo, you'll notice how he's dash slashing Reize while he's on the ground. Reize then suddenly jumps right into him instead of away from him to initiate the dive kick. In our next example using footage from Boss Fight Database, they try to dash slash Reize, but since he takes no hit stun, hit pause, or knockback of any sort, he moves into the player after they just bounced off of him. Recall that Shovel Knight has a system where the enemy's hitbox is temporarily deactivated if the player hits them to avoid interactions like this. It acts as a failsafe of sorts. But what we're seeing here is when the failsafe fails. What the fuck was that? The player didn't take damage because the balls hit them from messing up a jump or failing to run out of the way. The player is taking damage because what was otherwise supposed to guarantee a successful attack stopped working. The issue here is not from the dive kick itself, but the portion where he jumps back up into the air at a sharp angle right after landing. Besides the problem that comes from having such a sharp change in velocity like that, the reason this part of his movement is at issue is because it works against the mechanic of the dash slash. The dash slash itself naturally creates separation from bouncing up and away on the thing you're slashing at. The actual dive kick portion isn't an issue because if you connect, Reize is moving down while you're moving up, so you will reliably bounce up and over him as expected. Thus the reason why the upward portion of his dive kick works against how the dash slash is designed is because it moves into the space that you're bouncing. Besides the absurdity of how it looks in action, it results in the issue of clarity and lack of interplay. The boss has far fewer recognizable and reliable punish windows than it lets on. The last move to cover is unfortunately the worst one, which is when he slashes at you while on the ground. I'll be using Keith Ballard's gameplay footage again for an example, but this time with the audio left in. Pay attention to when he's hit by the ground slashes.
Okay. That's a change. That's a change. That's not how that was before. Ow. Alright, I wasn't necessarily expecting to jump directly into a boss fight. Son of a bitch. How do I hit him? He deflects me when I try to attack him.
Notice how he's repeatedly hit by the ground slash to where he expresses confusion to how to even hit the boss. The problem with this move is fairly simple. You can't react to it. He throws his projectile, right? First problem, right here. What was that?
He just hit you with that guile.
Yep. He's got an anti-air. So,
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
I do my dash slash. You can see him enter the sprite for the dash slash. Both at the same time, but his is bigger than mine. There's no way you can see that. That's not reactable. That's like 2 frames. This is perhaps the most cut and dry example of making things unfair by making things too fast. The slash he does on the ground easily becomes a source of confusion by the fact that it makes your most direct means of attacking a boss unreliable. You can't jump over him to get behind him either. Your only option is to use the walls to get around him. And so when you have that type of attack, because here's the sort of setup that what most of the boss fight takes place is that he'll throw that boomerang. That boomerang will shoot other smaller boomerangs. He will run around on the ground and then try to, attack you. The boomerang projectiles naturally push you into the air because you can only jump over them. So you might think, oh, try to use the dash slash to sort of like bounce off the enemy or pogo off the enemy, similar to the way Shovel Knight normally fights, while at the same time dodging those boomerangs. And this one move completely ruins that dynamic. Putting it all together, you have a boss that moves on the ground, but you can't reliably attack on the ground unless you're behind him, a detail which is not adequately conveyed, and even then he can just randomly jump into you. You can't reliably attack him in the air unless it's the downward portion of the dive kick. The boomerang throw he does is so overtuned it means you can be put into an impossible scenario just from being too close, which means less interplay and more waiting for an opening to present itself due to how strict the design is. Even with an approach to the boss of waiting for them to commit to an attack and then punish, you often can't because Reize moves too much. Unlike Mega Man bosses where there are distinct and noticeable pauses in their actions that allow you to understand one move from another and provide clear opportunities to strike or counterattack, Reize is so continuous in his movement and overbearing with his offense that you aren't given much clear opportunity to press your advantage or understand what's going on to avoid oncoming attacks.